Hello there. So I'm sitting here rendering content for a podcast that we recorded yesterday, which, yeah, it's taking its time. It's doing its thing. But I'm not used to render times. Like, things usually move pretty fast these days. But it did remind me of this creepy ass time when I was learning how to edit back in the late 90s, at Wintec in Kirikiriroa, Hamilton, which I thought I'd share you the story of because it's kind of creepy and a little bit weird and exactly the kind of fun sort of story you're going to want to hear late at night. Or, probably not because it's a little bit creepy, as I said. So we used to have after hours access into the edit suites, and we have to go in and edit up on things like Avid, which is a little bit different to what I use now. I use Final Cut now. Very different systems, but the whole place was sort of segmented and locked off in different ways. So your keycard access got you into the edit suite, and it got you into the bathrooms, and that was it. The studio space, where all the expensive camera gear was and all the sets and stuff like that were, that was all off limits, and you were not allowed to go in there after hours. Nobody had the key, so nobody could get in. But for some weird reason, if you were there editing after midnight, you could hear people in there. And like the first time I did it, I just thought, oh, you must be, a teacher in there, or, somebody who's in post-grad study, they're there doing some shit. Who knows what it is? But I was there editing a project over a week or so because I was a terrible person as a teenager who had no social life, and this is how I spent my time. But I was there editing a few early mornings, and render times took forever back then. So you had to just wait and wait and wait because you couldn't do anything while it was rendering. It was so archaic. But I'd hear applause. Like, it was really weird. You'd be sitting there and you'd hear something scraping across the floor, and then you'd hear applause, and you'd hear noise coming from there, people cheering, all in the room next door. And it was super weird. Like, I wasn't the only one who heard this, but it was, if it's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, that is not the sort of thing you want to hear coming from an empty room. So the edit suite that I was in was completely blocked off. You couldn't see any of the other rooms. But the one next to it had a window that went into the studio. So I remember sneaking in one night and checking through the window, but it was completely blocked from the other side. You couldn't see anything at all. There was no movement, no noise, but there was sound coming from in there. I remember hitting up one of the teachers about what was going on there, one of the lecturers, and he turned around and says, oh, that's just been going on for years. That's the noise of the studio. Like, studios shouldn't be making noises without people in there. It's not right. Speaking of noise, I can actually hear behind me some audio, which means that the rendering has finished. So that's been your weird, creepy little story from my time as a teenager.